What's going on? It's SFT back again with another video. This video is going to be based on the Tee Higgins situation with him being franchise tagged for the second time. And some of the issues I have with it, some of the issues I have in general with the Bengals a little bit. And we're going to be talking about the history of the franchise tag, key players who have been franchise tagged, the different things that happen to those players, and how this negatively impacts players and sometimes hurts franchises. Before getting into that video, please subscribe, like the damn video, and let's talk about it, man. Recently, Tee Higgins hit with the second franchise tag, and what can I say about it? I'm just really disappointed in the Bengals. They had an opportunity to make a decision, either sign him, move on from him. Similar to defensive end Trey Hendrickson had an opportunity to sign him. Now they're most likely going to trade him because they're not going to give him the contract he wants and a contract he's deserving of. Just a lot of issues I have with the Bengals, but we're going to get into the history of the franchise tag, because the franchise tag, it's just so troublesome, and it's an issue for mainly the players. I don't like it for the players, especially players that are looking for that first big contract, something to secure them, and an opportunity for this player to hit the market and to really be valuable to another team. But the franchise tag was introduced in 1993 as a part of the NFL collective bargaining agreement, allowing teams to retain one player from free agency with a one-year contract based on the top salaries at the player's positions. Now, there's a difference between a franchise tag and a transition tag. A franchise tag is a one-year contract based on top 5 salaries at the position. A transition tag is a one-year contract based on top 10 salaries, with the team having the right to match any offer. Now, let's get into some of the more notable players that have been franchise tagged the last couple of years. We can get into one of the older ones. Drew Brees, man, in 2005 and 2006 for the San Diego Chargers, he was franchise tagged, and that was during a time where I think he had his shoulder surgery around that time, and they were just unsure of him, not knowing of his situation, right? They didn't know if they want to commit to him full time, so they franchise tagged quarterback twice. Now, I'm kind of a fan of franchise tagging quarterback twice. I really am a fan of it, because I think when you franchise tag a quarterback, right, regardless they're a quarterback, they're going to retain some type of value, right? You're not going to be taking too much of a cap hit if you were to trade them, as long as you're not signing like a really bad quarterback. Most of the time you can obtain a first or second round pick, most likely, for a quality quarterback, not a top 10 quarterback, but a 10 through 17 range of a quarterback. You can obtain something. And that's no different than with Kirk Cousins to Washington. They put Kirk Cousins in 2016 and 2017 on a franchise tag. Now, that's another situation where I'm a big fan of putting quarterbacks on a franchise tag, especially quarterbacks you're not really too sure of. They haven't taken that big step. You haven't seen the level of play you want to see. However, there's not another option on the market, and you don't have a backup quarterback. You don't have anything to ensure it. So why not let this guy play out and have a plan later on, right? Draft a guy, have a plan later on overall, to see what happens. If I were to give you an example right now, Jalen Hurts and the departure of Carson Wentz, yes. When Carson Wentz was about to leave, I think his last year or so, right? They ended up drafting Jalen Hurts in the second round, picked him up as a quarterback. A lot of people took that as offense, saying, why would you pick up a quarterback in the second round when you have a franchise guy on a franchise contract? But all of a sudden it stops working out. He had one of his worst seasons last year, I believe, with the Eagles. Terrible turnovers, and to get rid of him, they bring in Jalen Hurts those last couple of games, and into the next season they furthermore move on with him, and they send Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts. Another time when I love the franchise tag. That's an example of preparing for the future and what you should do if you were to double franchise tag a quarterback, or at least getting what you want out of them. Another example, Lamar Jackson situation. I personally didn't like that, because you knew what he was. You knew what you were expecting of him. Like, I felt that 2 years before they could have got a far better contract than they did 2 years later. They could have paid less money if they did 2 years before, but either way, they could have got at least 3 first-round picks. You saw what that Seattle Seahawks got for Russell Wilson. You could have got a similar, maybe even a little bit more of a package for him. You're trading a quarterback in his prime, putting up MVPs. Like, this is the time. Yes, he was a little injury prone, but this is the time to trade for a guy like him and to start that next journey with him. No different than Luka Doncic is with now the Lakers, right? It's a perfect opportunity, but they didn't do it, which they're smart to do, and they re-signed him on a long-term contract. I like the franchise tag when it comes to quarterbacks. Now, when it comes to other positional groups, I'm just not as much of a fan of it, and I'm really a believer in trading. Like, you should be trading these guys, okay? And this includes players like Le'Veon Bell, 2017, franchise tagged once, right? Played really good. played really good 2018. He gets franchise tagged again, sits the whole year like he should. Like, if you're a player, right, and you balled out on the franchise tag year, it's time for you to get paid, and you get franchise tagged again. Man, that's a serious problem. Like, I just don't like that mentality. Your player showed out, and showed they're ready to get that big time contract. They earned it. That 5 years they spent there, they've earned it, man. They earned your respect. They've earned that contract. It's showing of lack of player support, and I understand it's a business and this is multi-million dollars that you are investing in a player, but still, this player is one of the rare players on your team you're probably playing. You are paying Ben Roethlisberger big money, but you want to pay Le'Veon Bell 15, 16, 17 million? It's absolutely ridiculous, and you want to guarantee him any type of money? That's when I start to have an issue with it. In my eyes, this T. Higgins situation is very similar to what I saw with Le'Veon Bell. Obviously, I don't expect him to sit the last year, and I'm not going to disrespect the Steelers, comparing them to the Bengals and how they run their organization, but just the Bengals, another time when they're not going to, when it comes to the Bengals, I expect them to do the exact same thing with Ja'Marr Chase coming up. They're going to franchise tag him once next year, and he should sit out. He really should sit out next year if they do franchise tag him. But for me, this year, you had half T. Higgins? You didn't even have a full T. Higgins. He was injured half the year with some ankle injuries, some calf injuries, injured a decent amount of the year, right? I'm looking right now at this team, thinking to myself, Trey Hendrickson's gone on a trade, as I mentioned earlier, right? And you had Hubbard just retire. You had a defense that was terrible last year. You fired your defensive coordinator like you should have done. You have a defense that has so many holes, and you're going to have to make the most out of the draft coming up to somewhat revive this defense. And I can't even expect that this defense is still going to be, a top 15 defense? Above average defense? I still expect them to be sitting in that bottom 10 range. You keep a wide receiver that you're going to be paying $29 million to, that's going to be directly on the cap. This simply doesn't make sense. You need to move on from him. You can get a lot for him too. You could potentially get a second round pick, even though most teams are going to look at him and say, he's gone after this year. There's no way he stays on Cincinnati Bengals, right? But I just hate the mentality of what the franchise tag at times represents. The franchise tag is supposed to be, as I mentioned earlier, for players that haven't proven themselves, or for quarterbacks where you don't want to invest too much money in. And this really includes players that have that Blake Griffin, that Josh Hines Allen year, that Josh Allen last year, number 41 for the Jaguars year, where they're playing sensational their contract year, and all of a sudden they expect to be paid like one of the top 5 defensive ends in the league when they're clearly not one of the top 5 defensive ends in the league. That is when a franchise tag is perfect. It's literally perfect. You smack it on them and you see how they play and if they're deserving of that contract. If they haven't maximized that rookie contract at all, if they don't look good their first 4 years and the last year they look sensational. But for players that have played really good for your team, that have shown out for your team consistently, for you to keep giving them franchise tag after franchise tags just simply doesn't make sense to me, and it really ruins your team culture. It shows players, you're not going to get paid if you work hard. If you ball out, you're not going to be the one getting paid, right? We're going to pay who the hell we want to, and it is what it is. And to me, it's a showing of a low-class organization. And I think the Bengals are a low-class organization, man. Coming into next year, I don't expect much from them. Do I expect them to make the playoffs? No. Hopefully they can make the playoffs. They can make a little run. But I expect them to still get those really poor losses against bottom teams in the NFL. In conclusion, a franchise tag should be viewed as the ability for a team to tag a player they're not confident in, that you don't know what they're going to get out of. Not a player like Saquon Barkley, not a player like Jonathan Taylor. These are not guys who need to be franchise tagged. You need to franchise tag guys like Kirk Cousins at that point. You need to, if I were to look at it right now, you need a franchise tag. Guys who needed to be franchise tagged was Tua. Guys who needed to be franchise tagged was Trevor Lawrence. Guys who haven't put up great years, but you want to franchise tag them and to see what they can show you later on, if they can mature that 4th, 5th, potentially even 6th year. Those are guys you need to really hit with the franchise tag, not your better players. You don't franchise tag your better players that have clearly shown what they're able to do. It sends a message to your locker room, man. It sends a really bad message from the front office to your locker room saying, we're going to squeeze as much out of you as possible, and after we're done, we're not going to confirm anything for you. I hate it, man. It has a stench to it. It's a shame to see. I don't expect much from them. Poor decision by a poor organization. It's just a damn shame, man. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like, subscribe. Peace.